The so-called MJ-12 Special Operations Manual is an alleged government document that entered the public domain largely, though not entirely, through Timothy Cooper, a private UFO document collector during the mid-1990s. In this episode, we'll take a closer look at what this document claims to be and why it has become one of the more controversial pieces of the MJ-12 archive. Today, I'll be presenting a full reading of the Special Operations Manual. Like the Eisenhower Briefing Document, no complete audio version of this material currently exists. Although the manual is purportedly dated to roughly 3 months prior to the Cutler-Twining memo, I've chosen to present it last in its own dedicated episode due to its length and level of detail. As with the previous episode featuring the Eisenhower Briefing Document, this reading is not intended as an endorsement or a debunking. I'm not presenting the manual as an authenticated government document, but rather offering a neutral, uninterrupted reading of the text so it can be examined and considered in full by the public. The MJ-12 Special Operations Manual, commonly referred to as SOM1-01, entered the public sphere much later than the original briefing document, surfacing in the mid-1990s rather than during the initial MJ-12 disclosures of the 1980s. Unlike the 1984 anonymous film mailer, the Special Operations Manual did not arrive through a single dramatic leak, nor was it tied to a clearly documented chain of custody. Instead, it appeared gradually through UFO research circles as a photocopied document purporting to be a classified operational handbook governing UFO crash recovery, containment, and the handling of non-human biological entities. The manual was not accompanied by original negatives, archival references, or contemporaneous corroboration, immediately setting it apart from earlier MJ-12 materials. According to later accounts provided by Robert and Ryan Wood, photographic negatives of the manual, described as Tri-X film, were anonymously mailed on March 7, 1994, to aviation writer and UFO researcher Don Berliner. These negatives were said to be photographs of a document taken by an unknown individual, placing the true origin of the manual one step removed from the earliest known recipient. Berliner did not publicly release or widely circulate the manual, and the document did not enter the public record in any meaningful way at that time. Instead, he provided copies to the Government Accountability Office in an attempt to determine their authenticity. Ultimately, in 1998, Berliner stated that he was not inclined to regard the manual as genuine. It was therefore not leaked directly to a high-profile researcher in the way the Eisenhower Briefing Document was, but instead circulated later among UFO investigators and document collectors, eventually becoming associated with figures such as Timothy Cooper, who became known for receiving and disseminating a large cache of purported classified UFO-related documents during the 1990s. Cooper was a UFO document collector and intermediary, not a public researcher in the traditional sense. There is no evidence that Cooper disseminated the SOM prior to March 1994, which places Berliner as the earliest identifiable secondary recipient, even though Cooper functioned as the primary conduit through which the document reached a wider audience. From Cooper onward, the SOM spread through private correspondence, conference discussions, photocopies, and later early internet forums and document repositories. By the time it reached a broader online audience, the document was already divorced from any verifiable origin story. Cooper claimed that these materials were supplied to him by anonymous military and intelligence sources, some allegedly active duty personnel, and that he acted primarily as a conduit rather than an author or analyst. Among the documents associated with his name were not only versions of the SOM, but also other alleged briefings, memoranda, and technical papers related to UFO crash retrievals and non-human entities. He disseminated these materials through private correspondence, photocopies, fax transmissions, conferences, and later early internet postings, which allowed them to spread widely but also stripped them of any verifiable chain of custody. Because Cooper never produced original source documents, verifiable provenance, or named sources, and because many of the papers he circulated appeared after the MJ-12 narrative was already well established, most researchers view him as a secondary distributor rather than a primary leaker. His role is significant historically because his cache helped expand and solidify MJ-12 related lore in the 1990s, but his materials are also among the most frequently cited examples of why later MJ-12 documents are considered weaker, derivative, and less credible than the original 1984 disclosures. As a result, the Special Operations Manual is generally viewed as the most procedurally detailed but weakest sourced of the major MJ-12 documents. Its emergence well after the original MJ-12 narrative was established, combined with its highly explicit and almost instructional tone, has led many researchers, both skeptical and sympathetic, to conclude that it was likely a later expansion or embellishment rather than part of the original MJ-12 leak. While the SOM has been enormously influential in shaping modern crash retrieval mythology, its method of release and diffuse dissemination are central reasons it is widely regarded as less credible than the earlier MJ-12 papers. Similarly, Robert and Ryan Wood's involvement with the SOM is best understood as that of editors, analysts, and advocates, not as original authors or leakers of the document. Robert Wood was a senior aerospace engineer and program manager at McDonnell Douglas, where he worked on advanced aerospace systems and conceptual research projects. After retiring, he became a UFO researcher and document analyst, focusing heavily on the MJ-12 materials and related claims of advanced aerospace technology. His son, Ryan Wood, served as a document compiler and co-author in their work on the subject. They became closely associated with the SOM after it was already circulating within UFO research circles. They did not claim to have received the manual directly from an original source, nor did they present themselves as its authors. Instead, their role was to compile, study, and defend the document's plausibility, placing it within what they believed to be a broader, internally consistent MJ-12 corpus. Robert Wood, drawing on his aerospace and systems engineering background, focused in particular on whether the manual's structure, terminology, and operational logic resembled authentic Cold War-era military documentation. The author's note or editorial statement that appears at the end of some online PDF versions of the manual reflects this role. That note was added by the Woods, or publishers working with them, to explain how the document was obtained secondhand, to outline why they believed it merited serious consideration, and to respond to common criticisms. I begin the reading with this note. This manual is a replica of one that was photographed by an unknown person. The Tri-X negatives were mailed to Mr. Don Berliner, postmarked March 7, 1994. Don provided copies to the GAO. He took early initiative to determine their authenticity. Presently, in November 1998, although he has not been able to review the argument summary, he is not inclined to regard SOM1-01 as genuine. The first-generation print copies became a basis for this replica. It is very accurate and includes faithful replication of the few errors missed by the original proofreaders. Through page 21 was on the film, but pages 22 through 25 about the UFO B guide were found in an unclassified FOIA release document provided to Mr. Brian Parks from Maxwell Air Force Base, referring to the transmittal of such a guide in an unclassified letter dated 14 January 1955. This manual SOM1-01 is now in the public domain, having been largely reprinted in a book, Top Secret Magic by Mr. Stanton T. Friedman. That version, however, is incomplete, contains typesetting errors, and does not replicate the 6 by 9 inch format that was used. A number of arguments have been proposed to question the authenticity. It is the author's opinions that they have all been dealt with, and that there is no question at all that this is a genuine manual used for the purposes stated therein. These points of discussion will be treated in detail in an upcoming book by the authors noted below. Robert M. Wood and Ryan S. Wood, October 1998. Now for the reading of the original document in its entirety. Cover page, restricted, SOM1-01 to 12D1-3-11-1, Majestic 12 Group Special Operations Manual. Extraterrestrial Entities and Technology, Recovery, and Disposal. Top Secret, Magic Eyes Only. Warning: this is a top secret Magic Eyes Only document containing compartmentalized information essential to the national security of the United States. Eyes only access to the material herein is strictly limited to personnel possessing Magic 12 clearance level. Examination or use by unauthorized personnel is strictly forbidden and is punishable by federal law. Majestic 12 Group, April 1954. Removal page. Removal and or replacement of pages attached to the document requires written authorization from the Magic 12 Operations Officer and will be recorded by the document's records officer for each instance. Pages 31 through 40 inclusive removed permanently from document by order MJ-12 Command 0930/12, April 1955. Page 1. Contents. Note: contents specifically are not read here to avoid redundancy. Chapter 1. Operation Majestic 12. Section 1. Project Purpose and Goals. 1. Scope. This manual has been prepared especially for Majestic 12 units. Its purpose is to present all aspects of a Majestic 12 so authorized personnel will have a better understanding of the goals of the group, be able to more expertly deal with unidentified flying objects, extraterrestrial technology and entities, and increase the efficiency of future operations. 2. General. MJ-12 takes the subject of UFOBs, extraterrestrial technology, and extraterrestrial biological entities very seriously and considers the entire subject to be a matter of the very highest national security. For that reason, everything relating to the subject has been assigned the very highest security classification. 3 main points will be covered in this section. A. The general aspects of MJ-12 to clear up any misconceptions that anyone may have. B. The importance of the operations. C. The need for absolute secrecy in all phases of operation. 3. Security classification. All information relating to MJ-12 has been classified Magic Eyes Only and carries a security level 2 points above that of Top Secret. The reason for this has to do with the consequences that may arise not only from the impact upon the public should the existence of such matters become general knowledge, but also the danger of having such advanced technology as has been recovered by the Air Force fall into the hands of unfriendly foreign powers. No information is released to the public press, and the official government position is that no special group such as MJ-12 exists. 4. History of the group. Operation Majestic 12 was established by Special Classified Presidential Order on 24 September 1947 at the recommendation of Secretary of Defense James V. Forrestal and Dr. Vannevar Bush, Chairman of the Joint Research and Development Board. Operations are carried out under a top-secret research and development intelligence group directly responsible only to the President of the United States. The goals of the MJ-12 group are as follows. A. The recovery for scientific study of all materials and devices of a foreign or extraterrestrial manufacture that may become available. Such material and devices will be recovered by any and all means deemed necessary by the group. B. The recovery for scientific study of all entities and remains of entities not of terrestrial origin, which may become available through independent action by those entities or by misfortune or military action. C. The establishment and administration of special teams to accomplish the above operations. D. The establishment and administration of special secure facilities located at secret locations within the continental borders of the United States for the receiving, processing, analysis, and scientific study of any and all material and entities classified as being of extraterrestrial origin by the group of the special teams. E. Establishment and administration of covert operations to be carried out in concert with Central Intelligence to effect the recovery for the United States of extraterrestrial technology and entities which may come down inside the territory of or fall into the possession of foreign powers. F. The establishment and maintenance of absolute top secrecy concerning all the above operations. 5. Current situation. It is considered as far as the current situation is concerned that there are few indications that these objects and their builders pose a direct threat to the security of the United States, despite the uncertainty as to their ultimate motives in coming here. Certainly, the technology possessed by these beings far surpasses anything known to modern science, yet their presence here seems to be benign, and they seem to be avoiding contact with our species, at least for the present. Several dead entities have been recovered along with a substantial amount of wreckage and devices from downed craft, all of which are now under study at various locations. No attempt has been made by extraterrestrial entities either to contact authorities or to recover their dead counterparts or the downed craft, even though one of the crashes was the result of direct military action. The greatest threat at this time arises from the acquisition and study of such advanced technology by foreign powers unfriendly to the United States. It is for this reason that the recovery and study of this type of material by the United States has been given such a high priority. Chapter 2, Introduction. Section 1, General. 6. Scope. A. This operations manual is published for the information and guidance of all concerned. It contains information on determination, documentation, collection, and disposition of debris, devices, craft, and occupants of such craft as defined as extraterrestrial technology or extraterrestrial biological entities, EBEs in Section 2 of this chapter. B. Appendix 1-1A contains a list of current references, including technical manuals and other available publications applicable to these operations. C. Appendix 2 contains a list of personnel who comprise the MJ-12 group. 7. Forms and records. Forms used for reporting operations are listed in Appendix 1. Section 2. Definition and data. 8. General. Extraterrestrial technology is defined as follows. A. Aircraft identified as not manufactured in the United States or any terrestrial foreign powers, including experimental military or civilian aircraft. Aircraft in this category are generally known as unidentified flying objects, or UFOBs. Such aircraft may appear as one of several shapes and configurations and exhibit extraordinary flight characteristics. B. Objects and devices of unknown origin or function, manufactured by processes or of materials not consistent with current technology or scientific knowledge. E. Wreckage of any aircraft thought to be of extraterrestrial manufacture or origin. Such wreckage may be the result of accidents or military action. D. Materials that exhibit unusual or extraordinary characteristics not consistent with current technology or scientific knowledge. Extraterrestrial biological entities, EBEs, are described as creatures, humanoid or otherwise, whose evolutionary processes responsible for their development are demonstrably different from those postulated or observed in Homo sapiens. 9. Description of craft documented extraterrestrial craft, UFOBs, are classified in one of four categories based on general shape, as follows. A. Elliptical or disc shape. This type of craft is of a metallic construction and dull aluminum in color. They have the appearance of two pie pans or shallow dishes pressed together and may have a raised dome on the top or bottom. No seams or joints are visible on the surface, giving the impression of one-piece construction. Discs are estimated from 50 to 300 feet in diameter, and the thickness is approximately 15% of the diameter, not including the dome, which is 30% of the disc diameter and extends another 4 to 6 feet above the main body of the disc. The dome may or may not include windows or ports, and ports are present around the lower rim of the disc in some instances. Most disc-shaped craft are equipped with lights on the top and bottom, and also around the rim. These lights are not visible when the craft is at rest or not functioning. There are generally no visible antenna or projections. Landing gear consists of 3 extendable legs ending in circular landing pads. When fully extended, this landing gear supports the main body 2 to 3 feet above the surface at the lowest point. A rectangular hatch is located along the equator or on the lower surface of the disc. B. Fuselage or cigar shape. Documented reports of this type of craft are extremely rare. Air Force radar reports indicate they are approximately 2,000 feet long and 95 feet thick, and apparently they do not operate in the lower atmosphere. Very little information is available on the performance of these craft, but radar reports have indicated speeds in excess of 7,000 miles per hour. They do not appear to engage in the violent and erratic maneuvers associated with the smaller types. C. Ovoid or circular shape. This type of craft is described as being shaped like an ice cream cone, being rounded at the large end and tapering to a near point at the other end. They are approximately 30 to 40 feet long, and the thick end diameter is approximately 20% of the length. There is an extremely bright light at the pointed end, and this craft usually travels point down. They can appear to be any shape from round to cylindrical, depending upon the angle of observation. Often sightings of this type of craft are elliptical craft seen at an inclined angle or edge-on. D. Airfoil or rectangular shape. This craft is believed to be new technology due to the rarity and recency of the observations. Radar indicates an isosceles triangle profile, the longest side being nearly 300 feet in length. Little is known about the performance of these craft due to the rarity of good sightings, but they are believed capable of high speeds and abrupt maneuvers similar to or exceeding the performance attributed to types A and C. 10. Description of extraterrestrial biological entities, EBEs. Examination of remains recovered from wreckage of UFOBs indicates that extraterrestrial biological entities may be classified into 2 distinct categories as follows. A. EBE Type 1. These entities are humanoid and might be mistaken for human beings or the Oriental race if seen from a distance. They are bipedal, 5 to 5 feet 4 inches in height, and weigh 80 to 100 pounds. Proportionally, they are similar to humans, although the cranium is somewhat larger and more rounded. The skin is a pale, chalky yellow in color, thick, and slightly pebbled in appearance. The eyes are small, wide-set, almond-shaped, with brownish-black irises with very large pupils. The whites of the eyes are not like that of humans, but have a pale gray cast. The ears are small and set low on the skull. The nose is thin and long, and the mouth is wider than in humans and nearly lipless. There is no apparent facial hair and very little body hair, that being very fine and confined to the underarm and the groin area. The body is thin and without apparent body fat, but the muscles are well developed. The hands are small with 4 long digits, but no opposable thumb. The outside digit is jointed in a manner as to be nearly opposable, and there is no webbing between the fingers as in humans. The legs are slightly but noticeably bowed, and the feet are somewhat splayed and proportionally large. B. EBE Type 2. These entities are humanoid but differ from Type A in many respects. They are bipedal, 3 feet 5 inches to 4 feet 2 inches in height, and weigh 25 to 50 pounds. Proportionally, the head is much larger than humans or Type 1 EBEs, the cranium being much larger and elongated. The eyes are very large, slanted, and nearly wrap around the side of the skull. They are black with no white showing. There is no noticeable brow ridge, and the skull has a slight peak that runs over the crown. The nose consists of 2 small slits which sit high above the slit-like mouth. There are no external ears. The skin is a pale bluish-gray color, being somewhat darker on the back of the creature, and is very smooth and fine-celled. There is no hair on either the face or the body, and these creatures do not appear to be mammalian. The arms are long in proportion to the legs, and the hands have 3 long tapering fingers, and a thumb which is nearly as long as the fingers. The second finger is thicker than the others, but not as long as the index finger. The feet are small and narrow, and 4 toes are joined together with a membrane. It is not definitely known where either type of creature originated, but it seems certain that they did not evolve on Earth. It is further evident, although not certain, that they may have originated on 2 different planets. 11. Description of extraterrestrial technology. The following information is from preliminary analysis reports of wreckage collected from crash sites of extraterrestrial craft 1947 to 1953, excerpts from which are quoted verbatim to provide guidance as to the type of characteristics of material that might be encountered in future recovery operations. A. Initial analysis of the debris from the crash site seems to indicate that the debris is that of an extraterrestrial craft which exploded from within and came into contact with the ground with great force, completely destroying the craft. The volume of matter indicates that the craft was approximately the size of a medium aircraft, although the weight of the debris indicates that the craft was extremely light for its size. B. Metallurgical analysis of the bulk of the debris recovered indicates that the samples are not composed of any materials currently known to terrestrial science. C. The material tested possesses great strength and resistance to heat in proportion to its weight and size, being stronger by far than any materials used in military or civilian aircraft at present. D. Much of the material, having the appearance of aluminum foil or aluminum magnesium sheeting, displays none of the characteristics of either metal, resembling instead some kind of unknown plastic-like material. E. Solid structures and substantial beams having a distinct similarity in appearance to very dense, grain-free wood, was very light in weight, and possesses tensile and compression strength not obtainable by any means known to modern industry. F. None of the material tested displayed measurable magnetic characteristics or residual radiation. G. Several samples were engraved or embossed with marks and patterns. These patterns were not readily identifiable, and attempts to decipher their meaning has been largely unsuccessful. H. Examination of several apparent mechanical devices, gears, etc., revealed little or nothing of their functions or methods of manufacture. Chapter 3. Recovery Operations. Section 1. Security. 12. Press blackout. Great care must be taken to preserve the security of any location where extraterrestrial technology might be retrievable for scientific study. Extreme measures must be taken to protect and preserve any material or craft from discovery, examination, or removal by civilian agencies or individuals of the general public. It is therefore recommended that a total press blackout be initiated whenever possible. If this course of action should not prove feasible, the following cover stories are suggested for release to the press. The officer in charge will act quickly to select the cover story that best fits the situation. It should be remembered when selecting a cover story that official policy regarding UFOBs is that they do not exist. A. Official denial. The most desirable response would be that nothing unusual has occurred. By stating that the government has no knowledge of the event, further investigation by the public press may be forestalled. B. Discredit witnesses. If at all possible, witnesses will be held incommunicado until the extent of their knowledge and involvement can be determined. Witnesses will be discouraged from talking about what they have seen, and intimidation may be necessary to ensure their cooperation. If witnesses have already contacted the press, it will be necessary to discredit their stories. This can best be done by the assertion that they have either misinterpreted natural events, are the victims of hysteria or hallucinations, or are the perpetrators of hoaxes. C. Deceptive statements. It may become necessary to issue false statements to preserve the security of the site. Meteors, downed satellites, weather balloons, and military aircraft are all acceptable alternatives, although in the case of the downed military aircraft statement, care should be exercised not to suggest that the aircraft might be experimental or secret, as this might arouse more curiosity of both the American and the foreign press. Statements issued concerning contamination of the area due to toxic spills from trucks or railroad tankers can also serve to keep unauthorized or undesirable personnel away from the area. 13. Secure the area. The area must be secured as rapidly as possible to keep unauthorized personnel from infiltrating the site. The officer in charge will set up a perimeter and establish a command post inside the perimeter. Personnel allowed on the site will be kept to the absolute minimum necessary to prepare the craft or debris for transport, and will consist of military security forces. Local authorities may be pressed into service on traffic and crowd control. Under no circumstances will local officials or law enforcement personnel be allowed inside the perimeter, and all necessary precautions should be taken to ensure they do not interfere with the operation. A. Perimeter. It is desirable that sufficient military personnel be utilized to set up a perimeter around the site large enough to keep both unauthorized personnel and the perimeter personnel from seeing the site. Once the site is contained, regular patrols will be set up along the perimeter to assure complete security, and electronic surveillance will be utilized to augment the patrols. Perimeter personnel will be equipped with hand communication and automatic weapons with live ammunition. Personnel working at the site will carry sidearms. No unauthorized personnel will be allowed into the secure area. B. Command post. Ideally, the command post should be as close to the site as is practical to efficiently coordinate operations. As soon as the command post is operational, contact with the MJ-12 group will be established via secure communications. C. Area sweep. The site and the surrounding area will be cleared of all unauthorized personnel. Witnesses will be debriefed and detained for further evaluation by MJ-12. Under no circumstances will witnesses be released from custody until their stories have been evaluated by MJ-12 and they have been thoroughly debriefed. C. Situation evaluation. A preliminary evaluation of the situation will be completed and a preliminary report prepared. The MJ-12 group will then be briefed on the situation at the earliest possible opportunity. The MJ-12 group will then make a determination as to whether or not a MJ-12 Red Team or OPNAC team will be dispatched to the area. Section 2. Technology Recovery. 14. Removal and Transport. As soon as communication is established, removal and transport of all material will commence under order from MJ-12. A. Documentation. If the situation permits, care should be taken to document the area with photographs before anything is moved. The area will be checked for radiation and other toxic agents. If the area cannot be kept secure for an extended period of time, all material must be packed and transported as quickly as possible to the nearest secure military facility. This will be accomplished by covered transport using little traveled roads wherever possible. B. Complete or functional craft. Craft are to be approached with extreme caution if they appear functional, as serious injury may result from exposure to radiation and electrical discharges. If the craft is functioning but appears to be abandoned, it may be approached only by specially trained MJ-12 Red Team personnel wearing protective clothing. Any device that seems to be functioning should also be left to MJ-12 Red Team disposal. Complete craft and parts of crafts too large to be transported by covered transport will be disassembled, if this can be accomplished easily and quickly. If they must be transported whole or on open flatbed trailers, they will be covered in such a manner as to camouflage their shape. C. Extraterrestrial biological entities. EBEs must be removed to a top-secret facility as quickly as possible. Great care should be taken to prevent possible contamination by alien biological agents. Dead EBEs should be packed in ice at the earliest opportunity to preserve tissues. Should live EBEs be encountered, they should be taken into custody and removed to a top-secret facility by ambulance. Every effort should be taken to ensure the EBE's survival. Personnel involvement with EBEs, alive or dead, must be kept to an absolute minimum. See Chapter 5 for more detailed information dealing with EBEs. 15. Cleansing the area. Once all material has been removed from the central area, the immediate area will be thoroughly inspected to make sure that all traces of extraterrestrial technology have been removed. In the case of a crash, the surrounding area will be thoroughly gone over several times to ensure that nothing has been overlooked. The search area involved may vary according to local conditions, at the discretion of the officer in charge. When the officer in charge is satisfied that no further evidence of the event remains at the site, it may be evacuated. 16. Special or unusual conditions. The possibility exists that extraterrestrial craft may land or crash in heavily populated areas, where security cannot be maintained, or where large segments of the population and the public press may witness these events. Contingency Plan MJ-1949-04P/78, Top Secret Eyes Only, should be held in readiness should the need to make a public disclosure become necessary. 17. Extraterrestrial Technology Classification Table. Item number 1. Aircraft. Description or condition. Intact, operational, or semi-intact aircraft of extraterrestrial design and manufacture. MJ-12 code UA-002-6. Receiving facility, Area 51, S4. Item number 2. Intact device. Description or condition. Any mechanical or electronic device or machine which appears to be undamaged and functional. MJ-12 code ID-301-F. Receiving facility, Area 51, S4. Item number 3. Damaged device. Description or condition. Any mechanical or electronic device or machine which appears to be damaged but mostly complete. MJ-12 code DD-303-N. Receiving facility, Area 51, S4. Item number 4. Power plant. Description or condition. Devices and machines or fragments which are possible propulsion units, fuel, and associated control devices and panels. MJ-12 code PD-40-8G. Receiving facility, Area 51, S4. Item number 5. Identified fragment. Description or condition. Fragments composed of elements or materials easily recognized as known to current science and technology, i.e. aluminum, magnesium, plastic, etc. MJ-12 code IF-101-K. Receiving facility, Area 51S4. Item number 6, unidentified fragment. Description or condition. Fragments composed of elements or materials not known to current science and technology and which exhibit unusual or extraordinary characteristics. MJ-12 code UF-103-M. Receiving facility, Area 51S4. Item number 7, supplies and provisions. Description or condition. Non-mechanical or non-electronic materials of a support nature such as clothing, personal belongings, organic, ingestible, etc. MJ-12 code SP-331. Receiving facility, Blue Lab WP-61. Item number 8, living entity. Description or condition. Living non-human organisms in apparent good or reasonable health. Note: living entity must be contained in total isolation pending arrival of OPNAC personnel. MJ-12 code EBE-010. Receiving facility, OPNAC BBS-01. Item number 9, non-living entity. Description or condition. Deceased non-human organisms or portions of organisms, organic remains, and other suspect organic matter. MJ-12 code EBE-XL. Receiving facility, Blue Lab WP-61. Item number 10, media. Description or condition. Printed matter, electronic recordings, maps, charts, photographs, and film. MJ-12 code MM-54A. Receiving facility, Building 21, KB-88. Item number 11, weapons. Description or condition. Any device or portion of a device thought to be offensive or defensive weaponry. MJ-12 code WW-010. Receiving facility, Area 51S4. 18. Use of inventory system. A. The identification is performed as a duty of the officer making an inventory of the extraterrestrial technology or entities with the assistance of MJ Forms 1-006 and 1-007. Extraterrestrial Technology Packing List. Figures 1 and 2. Instructions for the use of each form appear on the reverse side of the form. 19. Packaging and packing data. A. Domestic shipment. Individual items are tagged and wrapped in a moisture vapor-proof barrier and heat sealed. They are then placed in a corrugated fiberboard box. The voids within the box are packed thoroughly with a neutral cellulose wadding to prevent movement of the items. The box closure is sealed with gummed craft tape. MJ Form 1-007 is placed in a sealed manila envelope marked MJ-12 access only and is firmly taped to the top of the box. The box is then cushioned at each corner and at the top and bottom with fiberboard inserts and is placed within a large corrugated fiberboard box. The entire outer box closure is sealed with gummed craft tape. A label is affixed to the outer box bearing the following information: destination, shipping code number, and the warning, MJ-12 access only. B. Overseas shipment. Items are packed as described above except that a desiccant and humidity indicator are included within the inner corrugated fiberboard box. Next, the box is wrapped in a moisture vapor-proof barrier and heat sealed. Then, packaged items are placed within a second waterproof carton scaled with waterproof tape. This second carton is marked MJ-12 access only on all sides and is placed within a water grease-proof lined wooden shipping container. The lining is sealed with waterproof tape and the wooden shipping container is screwed shut. The shipping container is reinforced further by nailing two 3/4-inch metal caps about 8 inches from each end. Shipping information is then stenciled on the surface of the wooden shipping container. Note: The packaging and packing procedure detailed above applies to non-organic items only. Data for handling, packaging, packing, and shipping of organic matter and non-living entities is provided in Chapter 5, Section 2 of this manual. Chapter 4, Receiving and Handling. Section 1, Handling upon receipt of material. 20. Uncrating, unpacking, and checking. Figure 3, Packaging Diagram. Note, the uncrating, unpacking, and checking procedure for containers marked MJ-12 access only will be carried out by personnel with MJ-12 clearance. Containers marked in this manner will be placed in storage in a top security area until such time as authorized personnel are available for these procedures. A. Be very careful when uncrating and unpacking the material. Avoid thrusting tools into the interior of the shipping container. Do not damage the packaging materials any more than is absolutely necessary to remove the specimens. These materials may be required for future packaging. Stow the interior packaging material within the shipping container. When uncrating and unpacking the specimens, follow the procedure given in 1 through 11 below. 1. Unpack the specimens in a top security area to prevent access of unauthorized personnel. 2. Cut the metal wires with a suitable cutting tool or twist them with pliers until the straps crystallize and break. 3. Remove screws from the top of the shipping container with a screwdriver. 4. Cut the tape and seals of the case liner so that the waterproof paper will be damaged as little as possible. 5. Lift out the packaged specimens from the wooden case. 6. Cut the tape which seals the top flaps of the outer cartons. Be careful not to damage the cartons. 7. Cut the barrier along the top heat-sealed seam and carefully remove the inner carton. 8. Remove the sealed manila envelope from the top of the inner carton. 9. Open the inner carton and remove the fiberboard inserts, desiccant, and humidity indicator. 10. Lift out the heat-sealed packaging containing the specimens. Arrange them in an orderly manner for inspection. 11. Place all packaging material in the shipping container for use in future repacking. B. Thoroughly check all items against the shipping documents. Carefully inspect all items for possible damage during shipping or handling. Sort the items according to classification number in preparation for transfer to the designated laboratory or department. Laboratory or department personnel are responsible for transporting items to the designated areas. This will be accomplished as quickly as possible by covered transport escorted by security personnel. Chapter 5, Extraterrestrial Biological Entities. Section 1, Living Organisms. 21. Scope. A. This section deals with encounters with living extraterrestrial biological entities, EBEs. Such encounters fall under the jurisdiction of MJ-12 OINAC BBS-01 and will be dealt with by this special unit only. This section details the responsibilities of persons or units making the initial contact. 22. General. Any encounter with entities known to be of extraterrestrial origin is to be considered to be a matter of national security and therefore classified top secret. Under no circumstance is the general public or the public press to learn of the existence of these entities. The official government policy is that such creatures do not exist, and that no agency of the federal government is now engaged in any study of extraterrestrials or their artifacts. Any deviation from this stated policy is absolutely forbidden. 23. Encounters. Encounters with EBEs may be classified according to one of the following categories. A. Encounters initiated by EBEs. Possible contact may take place as a result of overtures by the entities themselves. In these instances, it is anticipated that encounters will take place at military installations or other obscure locations selected by mutual agreement. Such meetings would have the advantage of being limited to personnel with appropriate clearance, away from public scrutiny. Although it is not considered very probable, there also exists the possibility that EBEs may land in public places without prior notice. In this case, the OPNAC team will formulate cover stories for the press and prepare briefings for the President and the Chiefs of Staff. B. Encounters as the result of downed craft. Contact with survivors of accidents or craft downed by natural events or military action may occur with little or no warning. In these cases, it is important that the initial contact be limited to military personnel to preserve security. Civilian witnesses to the area will be detained and debriefed by MJ-12. Contact with EBEs by military personnel not having MJ-12 or OPNAC clearance is to be strictly limited to action necessary to ensure the availability of the EBEs for study by the OPNAC team. 24. Isolation and custody. A. EBEs will be detained by whatever means are necessary and removed to a secure location as soon as possible. Precautions will be taken by personnel coming in contact with EBEs to minimize the risk of disease as a result of contamination by unknown organisms. If the entities are wearing spacesuits or breathing apparatus of some kind, care should be exercised to prevent damage to these devices. While all efforts should be taken to assure the well-being of the EBEs, they must be isolated from any contact with unauthorized personnel. While it is not clear what provisions or amenities might be required by non-human entities, they should be provided if possible. The officer in charge of the operation will make these determinations, as no guidelines now exist to cover this area. B. Injured or wounded entities will be treated by medical personnel assigned to the OPNAC team. If the team medical personnel are not immediately available, first aid will be administered by medical corps personnel at the initial site. Since little is known about EBE biological functions, aid will be confined to the stopping of bleeding, bandaging of wounds, and splinting of broken limbs. No medications of any kind are to be administered, as the effect of terrestrial medications on non-human biological systems are impossible to predict. As soon as the injuries are considered stabilized, the EBEs will be moved by closed ambulance or other suitable conveyance to a secure location. C. In dealing with any living extraterrestrial biological entity, security is of paramount importance. All other considerations are secondary. Although it is preferable to maintain the physical well-being of any entity, the loss of EBE life is considered acceptable if conditions or delays to preserve that life in any way compromises the security of the operations. D. Once the OPNAC team has taken custody of the EBEs, their care and transportation to designated facilities become the responsibility of OPNAC personnel. Every cooperation will be extended to the team in carrying out duties. OPNAC team personnel will be given top priority at all times, regardless of their apparent rank or status. No person has the authority to interfere with the OPNAC team in the performance of its duties by special direction of the President of the United States. Section 2. Non-living organisms. 25. Scope. Ideally, retrieval for scientific study of cadavers and other biological remains will be carried out by medical personnel familiar with this type of procedure. Because of security considerations, such collection may need to be done by non-medical personnel. This section will provide guidance for retrieval, preservation, and removal of cadavers and remains in the field. 26. Retrieval and preservation. A. The degree of decomposition of organic remains will vary depending on the length of time the remains have been lying in the open, unprotected, and may be accelerated by both local weather conditions and action by predators. Therefore, biological specimens will be removed from the crash site as quickly as possible to preserve the remains in as good a condition as possible. A photographic record will be made of all remains before they are removed from the site. B. Personnel involved in this type of operation will take all reasonable precautions to minimize physical contact with the cadavers or remains being retrieved. Surgical gloves should be worn, or if they are not available, wool or leather gloves may be worn provided they are collected for decontamination immediately after use. Shovels and entrenching tools may be employed to handle remains, provided caution is exercised to be certain no damage is done to the remains. Remains will be touched with bare hands only if no other means of moving them can be found. All personnel and equipment involved in recovery operations will undergo decontamination procedures immediately after those operations have been completed. C. Remains will be further preserved against further decomposition as equipment and conditions permit. Cadavers and remains will be bagged or securely wrapped in waterproof coverings. Tarpaulins or foul weather gear may be used for this purpose if necessary. Remains will be refrigerated or packed with ice if available. All remains will be tagged or labeled and the time and date recorded. Wrapped remains will be placed on stretchers or in sealed containers for immediate removal to a secure facility. D. Small detached pieces and material scraped from solid surfaces will be put in jars or other small capped containers if available. Containers will be clearly marked as to their contents and the time and date recorded. Containers will be refrigerated or packed with ice as soon as possible and removed to a secure facility. Figure 4. Extraterrestrial craft. Note: illustrations in this diagram are gathered from documented sightings in Air Force and Central Intelligence and from examination of wreckage collected from various sources, years 1947 to 1953 inclusive. Chapter 6. Guide to UFO Identification. Section 1. UFOB Guide. 27. Follow-up investigations. A UFOB report is worthy of follow-up investigation when it contains information to suggest that positive identification with a well-known phenomenon may be made or when it characterizes an unusual phenomenon. The report should suggest almost immediately, largely by the coherency and clarity of the data, that there is something of identification and/or scientific value. In general, reports which should be given consideration are those which involve several reliable observers, together or separately, and which concern sightings of greater duration than 1/4 minute. Exceptions should be made to this when circumstances attending the report are considered to be extraordinary. Special attention should be given to reports which give promise to a fix on the position and to those reports involving unusual trajectories. 28. Rules of thumb. Every UFOB case should be judged individually, but there are a number of rules of thumb under each of the following headings, which should prove helpful in determining the necessity for follow-up investigation. A. Duration of sighting. When the duration of a sighting is less than 15 seconds, the probabilities are great that it is not worthy of follow-up. As a word of caution, however, should a large number of individual observers concur on an unusual sighting of a few seconds duration, it should not be dismissed. B. Number of persons reporting the sighting. Short duration sightings by single individuals are seldom worthy of follow-up. 2 or 3 competent independent observations carry the weight of 10 or more simultaneous individual observations. As an example, 25 people at one spot may observe a strange light in the sky. This, however, has less weight than 2 reliable people observing the same light from different locations. In the latter case, a position fix is indicated. C. Distance from location of sightings to nearest field unit. Reports which meet the preliminary criterion stated above should all be investigated if their occurrence is in the immediate operating vicinity of the squadron concerned. For reports involving greater distances, follow-up necessity might be judged as being inversely proportional to the square of the distance concerned. For example, an occurrence 150 miles away might be considered to have 4 times the importance, other things being equal, than one that is 300 miles away. D. Reliability of person or persons reporting. In establishing the necessity of follow-up investigation, only short-term reliability of individuals can be employed. Short-term reliability is judged from the logic and coherency of the original report and by the age and occupation of the person. Particular attention should be given to whether the occupation involves observation reporting or technical knowledge. E. Number of individual sightings reported. 2 completely individual sightings, especially when separated by a mile or more, constitutes sufficient cause for follow-up, assuming previous criterion have not been violated. F. The value of obtaining additional information immediately. If the information cannot be obtained within 7 days, the value of such information is greatly decreased. It is of great value to obtain additional information immediately if previously stated criteria have been met. Often, if gathered quickly, 2 or 3 items, weather conditions, angular speed, changes in trajectory, duration, etc., are sufficient for immediate evaluation. If investigation is undertaken after weeks or months, the original observers cease to be of value as far as additional new information is concerned. Generally, late interrogation yields only bare repetition of facts originally reported, plus an inability on the part of the observer to be objective. G. Existence of physical evidence, photographs, material, hardware. In cases where any physical evidence exists, a follow-up should be made even if some of the above criteria have not been met. 29. Conclusion. UFOB Guide. It is understood that all above criteria must be evaluated in terms of common sense. The original report, from its working and clarity, will almost always suggest to the reader whether there is any, quote, pay dirt in the report. Section 2. Identification Criteria. 30. General. When a UFO report meets, in large measure, the criteria projected in Section 1, and a follow-up investigation is instituted, then the interrogator should ask what physical object or objects might have served as the original stimulus for the report. The word object here includes optical phenomena such as reflections from clouds, sundogs, etc. Frequently, 1 or perhaps 2 solutions will be immediately suggested by the nature of the report. The word solution cannot be used here in the scientific sense. A solution in UFOB work means that a hypothesis has been arrived at which appears to have the greatest probability of having given rise to the given report. Following is a group of hypotheses or examples which should prove helpful in arriving at solutions. A check should be made to see how many of the items are satisfied by the report and how many are missing. An effort should be made to obtain any missing items as soon as possible. Each typical hypothesis is listed in a separate paragraph. 31. Aircraft. A. Shape. From conventional to circular or elliptical. B. Size. Pinpoint to actual. C. Color. Silver to bright yellow, night black, or color of lights. D. Speed. Generally, only angular speeds can be observed. This depends on distance, but small objects crossing major portion of sky in less than a minute can be ruled out. Aircraft will not cross major portion of sky in less than a minute, whereas a meteor certainly will. E. Formation. 2 to 20. Numbers greater than 20 more likely birds than aircraft. F. Trails. May or may not have vapor and exhaust. G. Sound. 0 to loud, shrill, or low depending on altitude. H. Course. Steady, straight, or gently curving, not erratic, may appear still if approaching head-on. Right-angle turns and sudden reversals, changes in altitude ruled out. Note, although report may indicate erratic course, if other items check, follow-up should proceed on basis of aircraft because of psychological tendencies of excited people to exaggerate course changes. I. Time in sight. More than 15 seconds, generally of the order of a minute or two. J. Lighting conditions. Night or day. K. Radar. Should show normal aircraft returns. 32. Balloons. A. Shape. Round to cigar or pinpoint. B. Size. Balloons up to 100 feet will generally appear from pinpoint to size of a pea held at arm length. C. Color. Silver, white, or many tints. It may possibly appear dark as when projected against the clouds. D. Speed. Large-scale erratic speed ruled out. In general, hovering to slow apparent speed. E. Formation. Single to cluster. F. Trail. None. G. Sound. None. H. Course. Straight with a general gradual ascent, unless falling. I. Time in sight. Generally long. Note, balloon may suddenly burst and disappear. J. Lighting conditions. Night or day, but especially at sunset. K. Radar. No return except when carrying sonde equipment. 33. Meteor. A. Shape. Round to elongated. B. Size. Pinpoint to size of moon. C. Color. Flaming yellow with red, green, or blue possible. D. Speed. Crosses large portion of sky in few seconds except if coming head-on. E. Formation. Generally single, can break into shower at end of trajectory. Occasionally, but rare small groups. F. Trail. At night, almost always a luminous train which can persist as long as half hour, rarely. Daytime meteors are much less frequently observed. In daytime, leaves a whitish to dark smoke trail. G. Sound. None, although occasionally reported, believed psychological. H. Course. Generally streaking downward, but not necessarily sharply downward. Can on rare occasion give impression of slight rise. I. Time in sight. Longest report about 30 seconds, generally less than 10. J. Lighting conditions. Day or night, mostly night. K. Radar. Return from meteor itself is highly improbable. However, the train left by a meteor is a good radar reflector. L. Other. An exceptionally bright meteor is called a fireball. These are rare but extremely spectacular and on occasion have been known to light surroundings to the brightness of daylight. 34. Stars or planets. The planets Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn are generally brighter than any star, but they twinkle very much less, unless very close to the horizon. Stars twinkle a great deal, and when near the horizon, can give impression of flashing light in many colors. A. Shape. Pinpoint to star-like. B. Size. Never appreciable. C. Color. Yellow with rainbow variations. D. Speed. Stars' apparent speeds carry them from east to west in the course of the night, but they are often reported as erratic. The effect is psychological, most people being unable to consider a point as being stationary. Occasionally, turbulence in the upper atmosphere can cause a star to appear to jump, rare, but somehow twinkling gives the impression of movement to many people. Note, Just because the report says the light moves does not rule out the possibility of it being a star unless motion is from one part of the sky to another in relatively short time. E. Formation. There are no clusters of very bright stars, but faint stars are grouped in their familiar constellations. Note, a report of 4 or 5 bright clustering lights would rule out stars. F. Trail. None. G. Sound. None. H. Course. Always describe 24-hour circle around pole of sky from east to west. I. Time in sight. When clear, stars are always visible. Most stars rise or set during the course of the night. Stars low in western sky set within an hour or two. Stars in cast always go higher in sky. J. Lighting conditions. Night to twilight. K. Radar. None. 35. Optical phenomena. This can cover a multitude of things. Original scanning of the report should be made to attempt to determine whether it more likely describes a material object or an optical phenomenon. Optical phenomena, which have been reported as UFOBs, run from reflections on clouds and layers of ice crystals, sundogs, to the many types of mirages. No one set of optical phenomena can be set down as representation for the whole class. There is no limit to the speed of optical phenomena. Reflections can travel from incredible speed, as in the case of a search beacon on high clouds, to stationary. These cases, if well reported, will almost always warrant follow-up. Their variety and connection with upper atmospheric conditions make these observations especially valuable scientifically. A. Shape. Generally round but can be elliptical or linear. B. Size. Star-like to large luminous glow. E. Color. Generally yellow. D. Speed. Stationary to fantastic. E. Formation. Any. F. Trail. None. G. Sound. None. H. Course. Any. I. Time and sight. Any. J. Lighting conditions. Day and night. K. Radar. No return. In special cases, radar response will occasionally have to do with unusual clouds and meteorological phenomena such as described in Miniert's book, Light and Color in the Open Air. L. Other. One of the standard types is the sundog. In this, a large luminous halo is seen around the sun with 1 to 4 images of the sun placed along the halo circle at intervals of 90 degrees. Another report often has to do with a bright planet or even the moon shining through a light overcast. Mirage reflections are said to occur frequently when temperature inversions exist in the atmosphere. If an optical phenomenon is suspected, routine check of the meteorological records should be made to establish whether such inversions existed. Appendix 1. References. For the availability of items listed, check SR 310-20-3, SR 310-20-4, SR 310-20-5, and SR 310-20-7. 1. Applicable Regulations, AR 380-4, Military Security, Safeguarding Security Information. AR 750-4, Maintenance of Supplies and Equipment, Maintenance Responsibilities, and Shop Operation. 2. Supply. SR 725-405-5, Preparation and Submission of Requisitions for Supplies. 3. Other publications. XX 219-20-3, Index of Training Manuals. XX 310-20-4, Index of Technical Manuals, Technical Regulations, Technical Bulletins, Supply Bulletin Lubrications Orders, and Modification Work Orders. XX 310-20-5, Index of Administrative Publications. XX 310-20-7, Index of Tables of Organization and Equipment, Reduction Tables, Tables of Organization, Tables of Equipment, Type Tables of Distribution, and Tables of Allowance. 4. Test Equipment References. TM H-664, Theory and Use of Electronic Test Equipment. 5. Photographic References. TM 11-404A, Photographic Print Processing Unit, AN/TFQ-9. TM 11-405, Processing Equipment, PH-406. TM 11-401, Elements of Signal Photography. TM 11-2363, Dark Room, PH-392. That concludes the reading of the Special Operations Manual. Several books and publications have addressed the authenticity of the MJ-12 SOM, though almost always as part of the broader MJ-12 debate rather than as a standalone subject. From a pro-authenticity perspective, Magic Eyes Only by Robert and Ryan Wood discusses SOM1-01 within a larger framework of alleged crash retrievals and secrecy, treating the manual as consistent with other MJ-12 materials, even while acknowledging controversy over its provenance. More narrowly focused defenses of the manual have appeared in outlets, such as the MUFON Journal, including articles that argue SOM1's formatting, revision controls, and procedural tone align with genuine classified manuals, notably the piece often cited as Why the Critics Are Wrong About SOM1-01. On the skeptical side, the SOM is routinely critiqued in broader MJ-12 analyses, such as those by Stanton Friedman and Phil Klass, which generally argue that the manual's late appearance, explicit operational detail, and lack of traceable origin place it among the weakest and most likely fabricated MJ-12 documents. Friedman consistently argued that the SOM surfaced too late, lacked a credible chain of custody, and appeared after the MJ-12 narrative was already well established, which raised red flags for him. While he was open to the possibility that some MJ-12 documents could be authentic or derived from real classified material, he viewed the Special Operations Manual as far more likely to be a later fabrication or embellishment, possibly written to capitalize on or expand the MJ-12 mythology. In short, Friedman did not endorse the SOM as authentic and often cited it as an example of how weaker documents could undermine stronger MJ-12 cases by association. At the structural and stylistic level, the SOM does resemble authentic U.S. military and intelligence manuals from the late 1940s and early 1950s. Its use of numbered sections, procedural language, operational headings, and an instructional tone is broadly consistent with how classified manuals of that era were written. The document adopts the impersonal, directive style typical of field and contingency manuals, and its emphasis on chain of command, security controls, and compartmentalization mirrors genuine Cold War operational doctrine. These surface-level similarities are one reason some readers initially found the manual plausible. However, deeper comparison raises problems. Critics and even sympathetic researchers like Stanton Friedman have noted that the manual is too explicit, too complete, and too narratively tidy compared to authentic classified manuals of the period. Real operations manuals dealing with sensitive programs were often fragmented, highly compartmentalized, and deliberately vague in areas involving extraordinary or novel contingencies. By contrast, the SOM provides unusually detailed descriptions of exotic materials, biological entities, and recovery procedures in a single consolidated document, which runs counter to known security practices of the time. Additionally, authentic manuals typically show revision histories, cross-references to established doctrinal publications, and bureaucratic clutter that reflects evolving policy. The SOM imitates the look of this structure but lacks external corroboration. No related manuals, directives, or program documents exist to anchor it within a real operational ecosystem. As a result, many researchers conclude that while the SOM is stylistically competent and informed by real military documentation, it reads more like a post hoc reconstruction than a genuine artifact produced inside a compartmentalized Cold War program. The Special Operations Manual is convincing at a glance, but when compared closely to authenticated manuals from the same era, its internal completeness, narrative clarity, and lack of corroborating context are the very features that ultimately undermine its credibility. That said, there are authentic operations manuals from the same late 1940s to early 1950s period that contain quirks, inconsistencies, and structural oddities similar to those cited against the SOM, and proponents sometimes point to these as a reason those features alone cannot decisively prove fabrication. As with the Eisenhower Briefing Document, however, this argument works only in a limited sense. Researchers often point to declassified U.S. Army and Air Force manuals, such as U.S. Army Field Manuals and U.S. Air Force Technical Orders from the late 1940s, which sometimes show uneven formatting, inconsistent terminology, abrupt tonal shifts, and sections that appear oddly detailed alongside areas that are vague or underdeveloped. Early Cold War manuals were frequently rushed into circulation, revised piecemeal, and produced before documentation standards were fully standardized, resulting in authentic manuals that would look messy or even suspicious by later expectations. Another comparison sometimes raised is with early Joint Chiefs of Staff contingency and emergency planning documents, some of which combined speculative scenarios with procedural language in ways that later critics initially misinterpreted as unrealistic. In these cases, the presence of hypothetical language, unfamiliar contingencies, or unusual subject matter did not invalidate authenticity once provenance was established. Pro-SOM arguments suggest that a truly unprecedented problem, such as exotic technology recovery, might reasonably have generated a manual that feels atypical when compared to conventional doctrine. However, most historians and document analysts stress an important distinction. Authentic manuals with oddities are embedded within a wider documentary ecosystem. They reference other manuals, align with known doctrine, and are supported by parallel records, revision trails, and institutional context. The SOM, by contrast, exists in isolation, without corroborating directives, related manuals, or archival anchors. While its inconsistencies and stylistic anomalies do resemble those found in some genuine Cold War manuals, the absence of external validation is what ultimately weakens the comparison. In short, comparisons to authentic operations manuals do show that formatting irregularities, tonal unevenness, or procedural oddities alone cannot automatically disqualify the SOM1. However, most researchers conclude that authenticity depends not on whether such flaws could exist, but on whether they are supported elsewhere in the historical record, and that is where the SOM falls short for the majority of analysts. That concludes another episode of UAP as NHI. Be sure to join me in a few weeks for episode 22, the UAP video probability worksheet. Similar to the UAP as NHI probability worksheet featured in episode 9 that focused on the likelihood of NHI involvement regarding individual UAP cases or incidents, this one will be specifically designed to rate or grade the likelihood of NHI involvement associated with specific UAP videos. Until then, take care everyone, and I'll see you in the next installment.